I remember the summer of 1954 as warm and endless, the kind of season that seemed stitched to the hem of childhood itself. My family's house stood at the edge of the marsh, its white paint worn thin by salt winds, its veranda sagging as though tired from decades of listening. The air smelled of low tide and wild mint, and the nights hummed with crickets. I was 14, and the world felt vast but safe, except for the attic. It was my task, most evenings, to fetch kindling from the cupboard built into the attic's wall. My mother never went up. She would call from the kitchen, leave the door open just a crack. I always thought she meant for the light, though I noticed she'd glance at the ceiling after saying it, as if expecting some sound. The stair creaked in a way no other in the house did, long, tired groans that seemed to wait for my foot before speaking. I liked the attic at first. There was a window facing the marsh, where the sky turned copper at dusk. Gust motes drifted like slow planets, and it smelled faintly of cedar and something sweet I couldn't name. But each time I stayed up there longer than I should, I became aware of the quiet, how it pressed close, how it felt less like silence and more like listening. One evening I lingered, watching the tide yawn out to sea. I remember noticing that the air had shifted, not cooler, not warmer, just somehow nearer. The hairs on my arms rose. I told myself it was nothing. Yet as I reached for the cupboard handle, I heard the faint scrape of car. I closed the cupboard fast, took my bundle of wood, and left without looking back. From then on, I hated that duty. I tried to rush the task, but rushing seemed to make my ears sharper, and I would catch the smallest whispers of movement, the sound of something folding itself up inside the shadows. Once I told my brother, but he only laughed and said I'd been reading too many ghost stories. It was years later, in the early autumn of '62, that I returned. My parents had passed, and the house stood waiting, emptied of its voices, but not, I thought, of its breath. I walked through each room, touching familiar walls, opening windows stiff from neglect. Eventually I climbed the attic stairs, which groaned exactly as before. The windows still faced the marsh. The light was harsher now, unapologetic in its brightness, revealing all the dust and faded boards. I opened the cupboard. No kindling, only the box, untouched by time. Not even the twine seemed worn. And then came the smell, faint but unmistakable. Wild mint, exactly as it had been that summer I was 14. I knelt before the box and, without quite meaning to, untied the twine. The lid resisted, as if something inside leaned upward against it. I hesitated, my hands trembling, and in the quiet I thought I heard breathing, but it did not belong to me. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, each showing me at various ages, feeding the chickens at 6, sitting by the window at 9, standing in the marsh grass at 12. The final photograph chilled me. It was taken from above, through the attic window. I was 14, carrying kindling, and behind me, half in shadow, a figure leaned toward my ear. Its mouth was open, but I cannot say if it was speaking or swallowing the moment whole. I dropped the photo, and in the bright stillness of that day, the dust motes began to swirl, deliberate, patterned. I left the house without closing the cupboard. I have never returned. Yet sometimes, even now, when the night is very quiet, I hear the scrape of cardboard behind me and smell the faint sweetness of marsh mint. And I know it has found me.